I never thought I'd be the guy who quit a six-figure job to sell mushrooms from his garage, but here we are. It started in 2020, like a lot of these stories do. Pandemic, burnout, too many hours on Zoom pretending I cared about corporate synergy. I worked for a mid-sized marketing agency based out of Chicago. We had decent clients, tech startups, SaaS products, the occasional crypto bro trying to disrupt the pet food industry, but I was slowly dying inside. The trigger wasn't dramatic. It was a Tuesday. My boss pinged me on Slack at 11:30 p.m. asking if I had bandwidth to run a last-minute campaign for a client I hadn't thought about in months. I stared at the blinking cursor, half drunk on boxed wine and existential dread, and I typed "sure thing," like a coward. Then I closed my laptop, walked into the bathroom, looked in the mirror, and whispered, "IF *****ing hate this." My lease was up in 2 months. I had about $42,000 in savings, a rusty Honda Civic, and no dependents. I made a decision that night. Quit. I didn't even know what I was going to do. I just knew it couldn't be that anymore. The mushroom thing? That came from a podcast. Some guy was talking about how gourmet mushrooms were the future of food. High margins, short growth cycles, minimal space needed. I was intrigued. I binged YouTube videos of dudes with beards and flannel shirts growing lion's mane in tubs in their basements. One guy made $100,000 a year growing oysters out of laundry baskets in a one-bedroom apartment in Boise. I figured, if he could do it, so could I. So I did what any reasonable person would do. I moved out of my Chicago apartment, sublet a garage space in a small town outside Madison, Wisconsin, cheap rent, decent farmers markets, and spent $4,000 setting up a basic mushroom lab. Humidifiers, racks, pressure cooker, grain, spores. I turned the garage into a climate-controlled grow room using duct tape, insulation foam, and a space heater from Walmart. It looked like a meth lab, but smelled like a forest after rain. My first grow was a disaster. Contamination everywhere. I had no idea what I was doing. I followed some Reddit threads, watched more videos, and realized I'd skipped about 12 crucial steps in sterile technique. I started again. Second grow? Better. I got a few pounds of oyster mushrooms that were actually edible. I sold them at the local farmer's market. People bought them. Some even came back the next week and asked if I had more. That's when I felt it. Something I hadn't felt in years. Excitement. Like maybe this could work. I started documenting everything. I built a simple Squarespace site. I opened an Instagram account and posted daily photos of mushrooms growing in bags. I used my marketing background to tell a story. Local guy quit city life to grow mushrooms in his garage. People ate it up. Within 3 months, I was making $1,200 a week in farmers markets and direct-to-door deliveries. Local chefs started reaching out. I got my mushrooms into 2 farm-to-table restaurants and a co-op grocery store. I started experimenting with lion's mane, which is trickier to grow but sells for more. Customers loved it. I couldn't keep up with demand. I hired a high school kid part-time to help me bag substrate and clean tubs. I upgraded to a real fruiting chamber with automated humidity and CO2 sensors. My yield tripled. I hit $80,000 in sales my first full year. I paid myself $35,000 and put the rest back into the business. Sounds great, right? Except it wasn't all smooth. I got a visit from the county health inspector. Apparently, you can't just sell mushrooms out of your garage without a commercial kitchen license and some other bureaucratic nonsense. I had to shut down for 2 months while I navigated paperwork hell and retrofitted a small shed on the property to be legally compliant. Cost me $12,000 and most of my sanity. Then, there was the contamination scare. One batch of lion's mane went bad. I didn't catch it in time and sold about 5 pounds to a restaurant. Luckily, no one got sick, but the chef was furious. I lost the account and got a nasty 1-star Help review that tanked my Google results for weeks. Also, running your own business is lonely as hell. There were days I didn't speak to another human. Just me, spores, and the rhythmic hum of fans and humidifiers. I missed the social part of office life more than I thought I would. I started going to town hall meetings and volunteering at a local food pantry just to have conversations with people that didn't involve fungal growth stages. But here's the thing. I was free. Every decision, every win, every failure, it was mine. No more Slack pings at midnight. No more clients asking for just one more round of revisions. Just mushrooms, sweat, and the raw, terrifying joy of building something from nothing. This year, I launched a mushroom grow kit line. People kept asking if they could grow their own, So I put together DIY kits with pre-inoculated substrate and instructions. I sell them online and at markets. They're surprisingly popular. I've shipped kits to 18 states. I'm also beta testing a subscription box for rare mushroom varieties, along with recipes and pairings from local chefs. Revenue hit $170,000 last year. I paid myself $60,000. Still modest, but I'm reinvesting in a second location with a partner who's been doing large-scale microgreens. We're planning a hybrid urban farm that offers mushrooms, greens, and workshops. Do I miss my old life? Sometimes. The health insurance, the stable income, the team Slack banter about who's the hottest Chris in Hollywood. But I wouldn't trade this life for anything. I get to build something weird and real in mine. And it all started because I said no to one Slack message. So if you're sitting there, reading this at 11:30 p.m. with your jaw clenched and your soul leaking out your ears, maybe it's time. Not to grow mushrooms, necessarily, but to do the thing. The scary, stupid, maybe impossible thing you've been circling for years. I'm not saying it'll be easy. I'm just saying it might be worth it. If you enjoyed the video, don't forget to leave a like and subscribe to the channel. It helps the content grow and motivates me to create even more great videos. Turn on notifications so you don't miss any new uploads. By the way, I'm curious, when do you usually watch my videos? While working, studying, or just relaxing at home? Let me know in the comments. I'd love to hear from you. Thank you for your support. I was 29, broke, and sleeping on an air mattress in my sister's guest room when I stumbled into the weirdest idea that ever changed my life. I used to be a junior copywriter for an ad agency in Chicago. Fancy name, big clients, terrible pay. It wasn't the worst job, but it wasn't going anywhere. After 3 years of long hours and broken promises, I quit when I found out my boss gave my pitch deck to a new hire and let her present it to the client. I got 0 credit. I walked out that day with no plan, no backup savings, and way too much pride to beg for the job back. 2 months later, I was eating instant noodles and pretending I had freelance clients just to save face at family dinners. The story kicks off when my sister asked me to help my 9-year-old niece with her science fair project. The kid wanted to build a cardboard periscope. We spent a weekend making a janky little submarine-style thing with mirrors from old makeup palettes and duct tape. It was ugly, but it worked. I made a goofy little instruction sheet for her that looked like an old spy manual, crinkled the paper, added coffee stains, drew fake classified stamps, the whole thing. She loved it. 3 weeks later, my sister called and said all the other parents wanted to know where she bought the periscope kit. She told them I made it. Half jokingly, I said, "Tell them I'll make one for $20. I ended up with 5 orders. So I made 5 more, bought materials at the dollar store, printed my DIY spy-themed instructions, and packed them in Amazon boxes I'd been saving. I dropped them off at school with a dumb logo I doodled on each one. Spyscope. The parents paid me in cash, and one mom asked if I could make a compass kit next. Here's where the switch flipped. I stayed up that night thinking, what if this could be something? I went down a rabbit hole of kids' STEM toys on Etsy and Amazon. They all looked very sterile, very designed by committee. Nothing playful, nothing that looked like it came from a kid's imagination. So I went to work building a brand. I mocked up 5 kits: periscope, compass, crystal growing, invisible ink, and coded messages, all with hand-drawn guides that felt like they were made by some secret society of kid scientists. I used a free Wix site builder, took photos with my iPhone, and launched a store I called Curio Club. I priced each kit at $22 with free shipping, mostly guessing what parents would pay. I posted in 3 Facebook mom groups under a fake account named Lisa. I said, I got this DIY spy kit for my son, and he hasn't put it down in 3 days. I uploaded photos of the periscope and the fake manual, pretending it was a real review. The next day, I had 17 orders. I had 0 infrastructure. I made the kits by hand at the kitchen table. I used kitchen tongs to bend wire for the compass kit. I stained the guide pages with tea and dried them in the oven. I shipped everything from the post office a mile away. I was losing money on each kit, but I didn't care. I was addicted to the feeling of people wanting something I made. After about 2 months and nearly 200 orders, I finally admitted to myself this could be more than a hustle. I took out a $9,000 personal loan and found a local print shop that could produce the guides in bulk with a vintage paper look. I sourced materials in bulk from Alibaba and moved into a shared workspace downtown that had an assembly table and cheap shipping rates. The real game changer was when a mom from LA messaged me and said she worked for a parenting blog and wanted to feature Curio Club in their holiday gift guide. That post alone drove over 3,000 hits to the site in 2 days and 300 orders. I was still handpacking them, now working 16 hours a day and pulling my cousin in on weekends to help. I made my first $10,000 month that December. The following year, I applied to a small business accelerator. They gave me a $15,000 grant and introduced me to a retired toy exec who became my advisor. He helped me refine the kits to be easier to mass assemble, connected me with a packaging designer, and got me into talks with a small chain of museum gift shops. Fast forward 18 months, Curio Club was on track to hit $400,000 in annual revenue. I had 3 part-time employees, a 2-room office, and was getting inquiries from education companies about white-label versions of the kits. But here's the twist. I turned down a $750,000 acquisition offer from a large toy brand. They wanted the name, the IP, everything, but they were going to strip out all the weird handmade charm and turn it into a plastic-heavy, mass-market product. I just couldn't do it. This thing was born from duct tape and makeup mirrors. It was messy and scrappy, and kids loved it because it felt like a secret club, not a product. Instead, I raised $120,000 from a few angel investors who believed in the brand. We launched a subscription version, monthly curio crates with new themes like time travel, alien signals, and ancient inventions. Each one came with a kit, a guidebook, and a mysterious mission letter with puzzles to solve. We hit 3,000 subscribers in 6 months. Last year, I moved the company into a 5,000 square foot space and hired a team of educators, illustrators, and fulfillment staff. I still write the guidebooks myself because honestly, that's my favorite part, coming up with the weird backstories and hiding clues in the footnotes. The air mattress is long gone. I've got a little apartment downtown, a real bed, and a business that never should have worked, but somehow does. And every now and then, I get a letter from a kid who solved one of our puzzle crates and wants to apply as a junior agent. I write back to every single one. I built something kids actually care about, and it started with a science fair project and a lot of desperation. The thing I've learned, success doesn't always look like a big pitch or a tech breakthrough. Sometimes it looks like hot glue, coffee-stained paper, and a kitchen full of cardboard. I never meant to become an entrepreneur. It happened because I got laid off, and I was too angry to take another job. This was 5 years ago. I was working as a mid-level manager at a tech consulting firm in Chicago. Good salary, decent benefits, soul-sucking work. You know the type. I managed a team that built systems for boring clients. Think logistics tracking for toilet paper distributors. Not glamorous, but it paid well. Then one day, the company got bought out, and half of us got let go. I had just signed a lease on a new apartment, and my savings were decent, but not great. I started sending out resumes, but something in me snapped. Every time I hit send, it felt like I was walking backward into the same trap. I couldn't stomach the idea of going back to being a corporate drone. So, for the first 2 weeks, I just wandered. I biked around the city. I went to free co-working events pretending to be some kind of freelancer. I talked to strangers, which is weird for me. One afternoon at a random community center mixer, I met a woman named Carla. She ran a small but successful plant delivery service and mentioned offhand that she was looking for better logistics software. That made my ears perk up. I asked her what she meant. Her business, Green Roots, was thriving, but she was still using Google Sheets and text messages to organize her deliveries. She said she'd pay for something better, but didn't know who to ask. I offered to build her a simple dashboard. Nothing fancy, just something to manage her orders, assign drivers, and track deliveries. I didn't charge her anything up front. I just needed something to do. It took me 3 weeks. I built it with some open source tools and Firebase on the back end. It was janky, but it worked. Carla loved it. She showed her friend who ran a small local bakery, and suddenly I had another request. 6 months in, I'd built lightweight dashboards for 5 local businesses. I charged each of them between $500 and $1,500, which was not sustainable, but I started seeing a pattern. These weren't tech-savvy founders. They were people with real-world problems who couldn't afford $50,000 enterprise solutions, but were still desperate to get out of spreadsheets and chaos. That's when the idea hit me. What if I created a simple, modular dashboard builder for small business logistics? Something where a florist, a food truck owner, or a dry cleaner could drag and drop their way into their own operational software. I called it Brick. The idea was that each block of business, orders, drivers, customers, routes, could be a brick that they could stack together. I had no clue how to market it. I spent 3 more months building out a prototype and watching YouTube videos about no-code tools and SaaS pricing. I made a free version with 1 dashboard and limited bricks, then offered a pro version for $29 per month. My first paying user was a dog groomer in Milwaukee. I remember refreshing Stripe and seeing that $29 hit and yelling loud enough that my upstairs neighbor knocked to ask if everything was okay. That year, I made just under $12,000. I drove for Uber and did freelance UI work to cover the rest. I lived on instant noodles and bad coffee. But the thing was, it felt mine. Every day, I was building something that people were using. Year 2 was slow. I redesigned the whole thing twice, lost half my early users, and made so many dumb mistakes. I tried hiring a part-time developer from Upwork to help me build a new analytics module. He ghosted me after 2 weeks with half the money and left the code a mess. Lesson learned. But I also got my first break, a feature in a local business newsletter. It drove 300 people to my site, and 27 of them signed up. For converted to paid. Those numbers might seem small, but to me, it was gold. I started talking to every single user who signed up. I did Zoom calls. I watched them use Brick. I offered to help them set it up myself. By the end of that year, I hit $48,000 in ARR. I remember buying myself a pizza to celebrate. First takeout meal I'd had in months. Then COVID hit. Half my users were service businesses. They went under in weeks. I watched my MRR fall by 40% in a single month. I considered shutting everything down. But weirdly, I also started getting emails from new types of users, mobile therapists, personal chefs, traveling dog trainers. People starting side hustles because they'd lost jobs. They needed light logistics. They needed Brick. I pivoted slightly. I added new bricks for scheduling, invoicing, customer messaging. I made a big decision and added a free plan for pandemic-affected businesses. It was risky, but it built goodwill like crazy. That year, my revenue dipped, then rebounded. By the end of 2021, I was making $87,000 ARR. Year 4 was the breakout. A TikTok creator with 2M followers posted a video about weird tools I use to run my chaotic mobile lash business, and Brick was number 3. I had 1,800 new users sign up in 2 days. My site broke. I pulled 3 all-nighters fixing it and hired a customer support VA from the Philippines to handle tickets. Best $450 per month I've ever spent. I crossed $250,000 ARR 6 months later. I still remember walking around my neighborhood that night, holding a beer in a paper bag, just grinning like an idiot. I didn't even tell anyone. It felt too personal, too surreal. This thing I'd built alone in my apartment had become real. I now have 4 full-time team members, 2 developers, a designer, and my VA is now head of support. I pay myself $85,000 per year and live simply. Brick is at $620,000 ARR and profitable. We're not VC-backed. We've had offers. I said no. The best part? I get emails every week from business owners saying, I was drowning in spreadsheets until I found Brick. Sometimes people think entrepreneurship is about genius or hustle porn. For me, it was rage, then curiosity, then service. I still do Zoom calls with users. I still build bricks. I didn't start with a plan. I started with a woman at a plant shop who needed help, and that was enough. I didn't plan to become an entrepreneur. In fact, I didn't even know what the word really meant until I was in my mid-20s. I was a burned-out project manager working for a mid-sized logistics firm in Ohio, spending 10 hours a day solving problems for other people and getting yelled at for things out of my control. My boss used to call me the Shield because I absorbed all the blame from clients and upper management. The title was less flattering once I realized how accurate it was. The tipping point came during a performance review. I just pulled off a ridiculous logistical miracle involving 47 freight trucks, a broken-down warehouse system, and a major distributor threatening to cancel a contract. I was sure I'd finally get a promotion. Instead, my manager said, "You did okay, but we expect that level from everyone here." That's the job. I quit that day without a backup plan. Dumb? Probably. But it didn't feel dumb. It felt like finally taking a breath after holding it for 6 years. I spent the next few months doing odd gigs and freelancing on Upwork just to keep the lights on. I helped people with workflow charts, managed a few online stores, even rewrote product descriptions for a Canadian supplement company. Somewhere in the middle of all this, I helped a guy optimize his Amazon FBA business. He was selling water bottles, nothing special, but I was able to trim his shipping costs by 17% and automate his inventory management so he could finally stop doing it all by hand. That dude sent me $500 as a bonus and told 3 of his friends. 2 of them reached out to me within the week. By the end of that month, I had 4 small e-commerce business owners paying me monthly to just keep things moving. They didn't care what I did as long as packages went out on time and customers didn't send angry emails. I didn't realize it then, but I was becoming an operations consultant. I decided to go all in. I built a website, named my little hustle Streamline Ops. Got a friend from college to design a logo. I wasn't sure where I was going, but I figured it was better than going back to being a human shield. Then I landed my first big client. He ran a 7-figure drop-shipping business that sold home decor. He was overwhelmed, burning out, and thinking of selling the business just to get his life back. I stepped in and ran an audit on his whole operation, found redundancies, negotiated better fulfillment terms, and moved his customer service to a third-party team in the Philippines. 3 months later, he called me and said, "I finally took a weekend off. First time in 2 years. Whatever you're charging, double it." I didn't double it, but I did raise my rates. And I started thinking about how many business owners were in the same boat, trapped by the very thing they built. That's when I had the idea for SOPify. It started as a template library. Just Notion documents and checklists I'd made for clients, inventory management, customer support workflows, onboarding new hires. I bundled them up and sold access for $79. I thought maybe I'd get a few sales. Instead, I got 142 in the first week after a Twitter thread went viral. People weren't just downloading my templates, they were asking for help customizing them. So I turned it into a SaaS idea. A drag-and-drop platform where e-commerce entrepreneurs could build, manage, and share standard operating procedures. Like Notion meets Trello, but focused on operations. I partnered with a developer I met through a Slack group and spent 3 months turning my rough idea into a minimum viable product. We launched version 0.9 to a waitlist of 800 people. It was buggy. It crashed often. One guy lost 2 days of work and called it a nightmare disguised as a productivity tool. But we pushed updates like crazy, fixed issues in real time, and talked to every single user. I didn't sleep much that first month. But by the end of it, 230 people were still using the app, and 89 were paying $19 per month. I'll never forget the night I realized we had product market fit. A founder of a small DTC skincare brand messaged me on Twitter. "I use SOPify every day. I finally feel like I'm not drowning." We kept improving. Hired a real UX designer. Moved to scalable infrastructure. I started writing about the journey on LinkedIn and Twitter. Transparency brought trust and users. A micro VC fund reached out and offered $150,000 for 10% equity. It felt weird taking money, but it let me quit freelancing and go full-time. Fast forward to today, SOPify has 12,000 users, over 2,000 paying subscribers, and a small team of 5. We crossed $500,000 ARR last quarter. The numbers are great, but what really hits me is when I think about how it all started, from being burned out in a cubicle to building something that helps people not get burned out by their own businesses. I'm not some tech prodigy. I didn't go to Stanford or have a rich uncle. I just got tired of being miserable, found one thing I was decent at, and kept saying yes to scary stuff. I said yes to freelancing with no safety net. Yes to charging more. Yes to building a product I wasn't sure anyone needed. Yes to fundraising when it made me feel like a fraud. And every single yes brought me one step closer to something I didn't know I was capable of building. If you're reading this stuck in a job that crushes your soul, maybe your yes is overdue too. I never planned on becoming an entrepreneur. I didn't grow up selling lemonade or flipping sneakers on eBay. I was the opposite of that. I followed rules. I did what I was told. I played it safe. That's why it still shocks me to this day that I quit a 6-figure job with no backup plan, drained my savings account to start a business in an industry I knew nothing about, and somehow made it out alive. Let me rewind to where it started. 3 years ago, I was a senior project manager at a Fortune 500 tech company. I had a team under me, bonuses twice a year, business class flights, and a condo with a view. On paper, I had it made, but I hated waking up every day. I hated the meetings, the politics, the endless metrics. My creativity was dying slowly in a sea of spreadsheets and Slack messages. Then COVID hit. I got stuck working from home, and for the first time, I had room to breathe. I started baking. Not in the cute Instagram way. More like an obsession. I was trying to replicate this bread I had eaten in a little town in France a decade ago. I couldn't stop thinking about it. So I started baking every weekend. Then every day. I bought books, watched obscure French YouTube videos, joined forums. I was experimenting with fermentation times like a mad scientist. Eventually, I got good. Really good. My friends kept asking for loaves. One posted a photo on Instagram, and a few strangers messaged asking if I sold them. At the time, I laughed. Sell bread? I was making 6 figures managing international rollouts for one of the largest tech firms in the world. Why would I sell bread? But that question haunted me. Why wouldn't I? I started doing a little experiment. I listed a few loaves on Facebook Marketplace. $7 a loaf. Pickup only. I sold out in an hour. The next weekend, I did 10 loaves. Sold out again. Then 15. Then 25. I had regulars texting me on Friday to reserve their sourdough. People were driving across the city to get a loaf. That's when I had the terrifying thought, what if I did this full time? I told my girlfriend. She thought I was joking. I wasn't. I had been slowly dying in corporate for years. This bread thing, this felt like living. So I did what any rational adult does when they want to throw their life into chaos. I gave notice. Everyone thought I was having a breakdown. My manager offered me a sabbatical. My mom begged me to wait another year. But I was done. I'd saved enough to last maybe 6 months if I lived frugally. I was going to open a bakery. Only, I had no idea how to run a bakery. I spent the first month researching local food laws, finding commercial kitchen spaces, getting food handler certifications. It was a nightmare. But slowly, things started coming together. I partnered with a shared commercial kitchen and launched a weekly bread subscription model. I called it Crumb and Company. The idea was simple. Subscribers would get a fresh loaf every Saturday morning, delivered to their doorstep. I started with 22 subscribers, then 38, then 61. Every week, I baked through the night on Friday, delivering loaves in brown paper bags all over the city until 11 a.m. Saturday. It was exhausting. I was doing the baking, the delivery, the marketing, the finances, everything. 6 months in, I was at 140 subscribers and I was breaking. I needed help. So I hired a part-time baker. That was one of the hardest things, trusting someone with my process. But I got lucky. She was better than me in some ways. Cleaner. More methodical. We rented our own tiny commercial kitchen. It had barely enough space for 2 of us and no windows, but it was ours. Then came the pivot. One of our customers was a manager at a big coffee shop chain in the city. They were looking to replace their pastry vendor and asked if we could provide croissants and sourdough loaves wholesale. We had never made croissants. I said yes. That month was hell. We failed so many batches. Croissants are devilishly hard. But we figured it out. We started with 2 cafes. Then 5. Then 12. We were waking up at 2 a.m., baking hundreds of croissants, and delivering them before most people's alarms went off. Revenue tripled. We hired 2 more staff. I leased a bigger kitchen. That's when we got approached by a small investor group. They wanted to put money into opening a retail bakery with us. A real storefront. My gut screamed no. I liked what we had, a weird, underground delivery-based bakery with no front door. But the idea of a shop, of customers walking in, kids licking frosting off their fingers, it stuck with me. So we did it. I sold 15% of the company for enough cash to build out a beautiful 900-square-foot retail space in a growing neighborhood. We opened last fall. The first week was insane. Lines down the block. We sold out of everything by noon. We went viral on local TikTok. I had no marketing budget, no press contacts. It was all word of mouth. Turns out, people love a good story. And bread. People really love good bread. Now, almost 3 years after I sold my first $7 loaf, Crumb and Company has 19 employees, a flagship store, 26 wholesale accounts, and a 3-month waitlist for our subscription boxes. We're profitable. I pay myself less than I did in tech, but I'm the happiest I've ever been. People still ask me if I regret walking away from corporate. Not for a second. That job made me comfortable. This business makes me feel alive. The weirdest part? I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I just wanted to make the perfect loaf of bread. I guess sometimes, that's all it takes. I'm not sure if I'm a real entrepreneur yet, But here's the wild story of how I accidentally built a company making nearly $30,000 per month from something I started in a basement for fun. I graduated from college in 2018 with a degree in mechanical engineering. I hated it. My GPA was mediocre, and every internship I did made me feel like I was slowly decomposing at a desk. After school, I drifted through 2 jobs, both decent on paper, but soul-sucking in practice. I was laid off in early 2020 just before the pandemic hit, and suddenly I had nothing but time and $9,000 in savings. Like a lot of people, I spiraled a bit. I drank too much, played way too many video games, and fell into the classic, "what the hell am I doing with my life" phase. But I also got back into 3D printing, which had been a hobby since college. I still had my old Prusa 3 Malawian kwachas in the basement. It was dusty and janky, but functional. Out of pure boredom, I started designing these weird little desktop toys and mechanical puzzles. I posted one on Reddit. This puzzle cube that clicked and twisted and locked, and to my surprise, it got a couple hundred upvotes. Then people started DMing me. They wanted to buy it. At the time, I thought, okay, maybe I'll sell 5 of these and make $100. I didn't think it was a business, just beer money. I listed the cube on Etsy for $29.95 and made a TikTok showing it working. That TikTok went semi-viral, like 100K views, and I woke up the next day to 74 orders. I literally started laughing because my old Prusa could print maybe 1 cube every 6 hours. I was looking at over 2 weeks of nonstop printing, assuming nothing broke. Something always breaks. So I went full madman mode. I used my stimulus check to buy 2 more budget printers. I turned the whole basement into a print farm. Everything smelled like melting plastic and WD-40. I hand-assembled each cube, sanded the joints, glued magnets into place. It took me 30 to 40 minutes per unit. My girlfriend thought I was losing it. I shipped every order within 3 weeks. My total profit? Around $1,400. It should have ended there, but more orders kept coming in. Some customer posted it on a mechanical keyboard Discord. Then a YouTuber included my cube in a desk accessories video. Suddenly, I was getting wholesale inquiries, requests for different color options, even knockoffs on AliExpress. That part sucked. By July 2020, I was making about $3,000 per month in profit. Still hand-assembling everything, still working out of the basement. But I started seeing it as a real thing. I took a course on Fusion 360 to get better at designing. I upgraded to better printers. I built a basic Shopify site and added 2 more puzzle toys. I also raised prices to $39.95, which surprisingly increased sales. People saw it as more premium, I guess. I hit $10,000 per month in profit that fall. My biggest bottleneck was still assembly time. So I taught myself how to use Onshape and redesign the pieces for easier production. I started using heat-set inserts instead of glue. I outsourced the printing of some parts to a guy I found on a 3D printing Facebook group who ran 15 machines in his garage. He became my unofficial first employee. I paid him $3 per unit. He loved it. By March 2021, I moved out of my apartment and into a small 500 square feet workshop. No windows, bad insulation, but I felt like a king. It was mine. I hired a part-time college kid to help with packing and shipping. I added more SKUs. A gear fidget. A magnetic pen thing. A clicky switch tester that made keyboard nerds go nuts. The whole business was still under my personal name. I hadn't formed an LLC or anything, but we were doing $18,000 per month. Here's where it got messy. I got a cease and desist from a company in Germany who said one of my puzzle designs infringed on their patent. I had no idea what I was doing legally, so I panicked and immediately stopped selling that product. Revenue dropped 40% overnight. My anxiety went through the roof. I finally paid $800 to a startup lawyer to figure out what was legit and what wasn't. Turns out, I was fine. Their patent didn't actually cover my design, but the scare forced me to formalize everything. I registered as an LLC, opened a business bank account, and started tracking expenses properly. That summer, I hired my second employee and rented a larger 1,200 square feet unit in the same industrial park. We were now making everything in batches of 500 instead of 20. I started keeping actual inventory. I negotiated bulk plastic purchases with a local supplier. I bought my first $2,000 industrial printer, which could spit out 10 units at once. I cried the first time I saw it run. I was still working 70+ hours a week, but things felt sustainable for the first time. Then came the accidental moment that changed everything. In late 2021, a TikTok creator with 1.2 million followers bought one of my clicky toys and made a review video. I didn't even know about it until I woke up to 6,000 site visits and 500 new orders. I thought it was a bot attack at first. That video drove over $12,000 in revenue in 72 hours. So I started reaching out to micro creators with 20K, 100K followers and offering free products. Most said yes. I set up affiliate links and offered 10% commission. Within 6 months, TikTok was driving 60% of my sales. I finally quit doing assembly myself in early 2022. I hired 2 full-time assemblers and trained them to follow my process. I focused on new designs, marketing, and improving the website. I paid a real agency to redo the branding, and it tripled my conversion rate. I also launched on Amazon, not because I wanted to, but because knockoffs were everywhere, and I figured I might as well compete. It sucked at first. FBA is a nightmare, but it now accounts for about 25% of sales. Today, April 2025, the company brings in around $28,000 per month in profit. We've sold over 90,000 units across 5 main products. I've got a team of 6 people, including a customer service rep and a part-time TikTok manager. I still work a lot, but it's more like 45 hours per week instead of 80. I'm even thinking about taking a 2-week vacation for the first time since starting. It still feels surreal. I never set out to be an entrepreneur. I just wanted to make cool stuff in my basement. But somewhere along the way, this turned into a business. A real one. Not a billion-dollar unicorn, not VC-backed, but mine. Profitable, growing, sustainable, and maybe that's enough. 3 years ago, I sold my car for $4,300, sublet my overpriced Brooklyn apartment, and moved into my friend's attic in Jersey with the insane idea that I was going to start my own coffee subscription service. It sounds tame now, these things are everywhere. But back then, the idea of direct-to-consumer coffee beans from independent roasters was barely a thing. I wasn't a coffee snob or a startup savant. I was just burnt out. Before the leap, I was working in digital marketing at a decent agency. Good pay, great benefits, zero soul. I found myself looking forward to bad weather just to have an excuse to stay home. The only part of my day I enjoyed was this tiny ritual, grinding fresh beans from this obscure Vermont roaster I discovered on a random trip. The flavor, the process, it gave me a pause. I started ordering from different roasters and realized a whole world of craft coffee existed, mostly undiscovered. That was the spark. So I quit, burned bridges, ignored everyone's advice, and went all in. My business plan was a Google Doc titled Coffee Project, Do Not Share. I had no co-founder, no supply chain, and barely a clue. I started cold emailing roasters, pitching them on the idea of joining a curated monthly box. Most ignored me. A few were polite. One guy in Idaho called me a scammer, but a tiny family-run shop in Oregon said yes. Now I needed customers. I made a website using a drag-and-drop builder, did some basic branding, logo was a coffee cup with a rocket coming out of it, embarrassing now, and spent $130 on Facebook ads. 0 conversions. Literally none. My budget for month 1 was $300 total, and I had just wasted almost half of it. I wanted to cry, but I didn't even have health insurance anymore. So I pivoted. Instead of paying for ads, I spent the next 2 weeks writing personalized emails to coffee bloggers, YouTubers, and Redditors. I offered them free boxes in exchange for honest reviews. Some actually responded. One guy on YouTube with 9,000 subscribers made an unboxing video that brought me 22 paying customers in a day. It felt like a lottery win. Month 2, I had 60 subscribers. I shipped everything from the attic, packing boxes at 2 a.m. and handwriting thank you notes with each order. It was grueling, but people loved the personal touch. A few emailed just to say thanks. Those messages kept me going. Then came disaster. Roaster number 2 bailed a week before their beans were due. I had no backup and was already late on shipments. In a panic, I emailed a random cafe I'd visited once in Philly. The owner, bless her, overnighted me 50 bags at cost. I delivered the boxes a week late and offered everyone a $5 discount the next month. Not a single subscriber canceled. That's when I realized, people aren't just buying coffee, they're buying trust. By month 6, I was breaking even. I still didn't have a real supply chain. Every month was a new scramble. But I had 300 subscribers, 3 roasters in rotation, and something that looked like traction. That's when I made the dumbest mistake of all. I tried to scale. I took a $25,000 loan from an old college friend who believed in me. I used it to hire a designer, upgrade the site, and partner with a fulfillment center in Ohio. That was the first month I made less than the previous one. Turns out, the fancy new branding made the site feel generic. The fulfillment center lost 14% of the boxes. My customer service inbox exploded. I started refunding more than I was earning. 3 months later, I was down to 180 subscribers. My friends started asking about repayment. I felt like a failure. One night, I stared at my laptop, hovering over the close account button on the website dashboard, but I didn't click it. Instead, I wrote a brutally honest email to my remaining customers. I told them everything: the growth, the mistake, the lost packages, the debt, the doubts. I promised to bring packing back in-house, even if it meant working from a rented storage unit with no heat. I asked them to stick around one more month. I hit send and waited. 2 hours later, I got a reply from a subscriber named Leah. "You're one of the few companies I feel actually care." I'm in. Others followed. Subscriptions ticked up slowly again. I rebuilt. Slowly. Carefully. I found a small local fulfillment partner who was okay with handwritten notes. I scaled back the branding. Made it personal again. Within a year, I had 600 subscribers. Then 1,000. Then 3,000. I hired a part-time customer support rep, my first employee. We launched a referral program and partnered with 6 more roasters. Today, we ship over 5,000 boxes a month. We're profitable. I paid my friend back in full with interest. We just got a write-up in a small but respected food magazine. A VC approached me, but I said no. I don't want to turn this into another faceless subscription empire. The intimacy, the community, the connection, that's the whole point. People still ask if it was worth it. The stress, the debt, the 3 a.m. packing shifts, and the ramen-fueled nights. And every time, I say yes. Because it taught me something I never learned in any office job. If you give people something honest, even if it's messy and imperfect, they'll show up for you. Also, I drink way better coffee now. I never meant to be an entrepreneur. In fact, I spent the first 28 years of my life avoiding risk like it was an infectious disease. I majored in finance because it was safe. I interned at a Big 4 firm because it was safe. I joined a Fortune 500 right after college and sat in a gray cubicle doing risk assessments for 6 years. I wore button-downs every day, clocked in at 9, clocked out at 6, and I was so bored I could feel my brain calcifying. The turning point came during a mandatory corporate retreat in Aspen. I was seated next to the VP of marketing during lunch, and he told me, in a very offhand way, that he wished he'd had the balls to quit in his 30s and start that coffee subscription service. I asked him why he didn't. He shrugged and said, "Because life happened." That phrase echoed in my head the whole weekend. Because life happened. It haunted me. By the time I got back to New York, something inside me had cracked open. I couldn't ignore the itch anymore. So I started small. I built a dumb little Shopify site selling custom notebooks. I used a drop-shipping service and found a niche market on Instagram, bullet journalers. I spent nights writing posts, DMing influencers, running giveaways. For the first 3 months, I made exactly $294.27 in total revenue. But that $294 felt better than any quarterly bonus I ever got. It was mine. I made it. So I kept going. The notebook business never really took off, but it taught me something critical. I could learn as I went. I didn't need an MBA or some perfect idea. I just needed motion. My second idea came 6 months later, while talking to my cousin, who's a freelance photographer. He complained about how hard it was to book short-term studio spaces in NYC without paying absurd rates. I went down a rabbit hole of research and found out he wasn't alone. Thousands of creators were dealing with the same problem. Most studios were either long-term rentals or locked behind agency connections. That night, I bought the domain snapspace.co and stayed up until 4 a.m. building a landing page. I had no product, no back end, nothing but a form that said, "Get early access to affordable creative spaces." I posted it in 5 Facebook groups and 3 Reddit threads. The next morning, I had 146 signups. I showed the list to a developer friend, Ben, over beers the next week and asked what it would take to build a simple booking MVP. He laughed and said, "Money, time, and caffeine." In that order. I had 2 out of 3. I offered him equity. He said no. So I paid him $7,000 out of my savings. My girlfriend thought I was losing it. We launched 2 months later. The platform had 5 studios listed and a janky calendar that half worked. The UI looked like Craigslist's awkward cousin, but we had our first booking in 48 hours. By month 3, we were averaging $3,200 a month in bookings, and I was still working full-time. I'd sneak into meeting rooms to answer customer support calls. I once muted a Zoom meeting to walk someone through unlocking a keypad in Brooklyn. At month 5, I quit my job. I didn't tell my parents for 2 weeks. Things moved fast after that. We expanded to LA, then Chicago. We onboarded 40 new studios in the first year, mostly through cold email and referrals. Word spread. Creators talked. Photographers, content creators, even micro-influencers started using Snapspace to rent out small, affordable spaces with good lighting and decent backdrops. Revenue hit $18,000 per month by year 2. We were profitable, lean, and independent. Then came the venture capital sniffers. I got a DM on LinkedIn from a VC associate who said he loved what we were building. I ignored it. He followed up. Then someone more senior emailed me. They invited me to coffee in Soho. I went. 3 weeks later, I had a term sheet in front of me. $1.2 million for 20% of the company. I panicked. This wasn't a side hustle anymore. This was real. Lawyers got involved. Accountants. Diligence teams. I spent 2 months reading more legalese than I did in all of college. We negotiated it down to 17% and closed the round. With funding came pressure. We hired fast, too fast. I brought on a head of operations I didn't vibe with and regretted it within 6 weeks. We launched in 2 more cities without proper market research. Churn went up. Customer service went down. The platform started glitching because our code base hadn't scaled well. The worst moment came when a high-profile TikTok creator booked a space in Atlanta that turned out to be double-booked. She posted a video blasting us. It went viral. I got death threats. We lost 500 users in 3 days. I barely slept for a month. But that's the thing about building something real. You're too deep to quit. You just eat the shit, fix what you can, and try to avoid making the same mistake twice. We survived the storm. Cleaned house. Fired the ops guy. Rebuilt the code base from scratch with a new CTO. Slowed expansion. Invested in support. Sent apology credits to every customer. The platform stabilized. By year 4, Snapspace was doing $1.1 million in annual recurring revenue. We had over 700 active listings in 7 cities. We added hourly meeting rooms and podcast studios to the mix. I gave my cousin free bookings for life. I still don't think of myself as some genius founder. I'm just someone who got tired of waiting for life to happen. If there's one thing I've learned, it's that most of entrepreneurship isn't glamour or rocket science. It's customer support at 2 a.m., Google Sheets, and not giving up when a stranger on the internet says your idea sucks. I've failed publicly, been roasted on forums, nearly lost it all more than once, but I wouldn't trade it for anything. Because this is mine. And it all started with a conversation over lunch. Hey, friends, if you enjoy this content, don't forget to like the video and share your thoughts in the comments. We really want to know what you like and what can be improved. What do you think of the video? Are there any topics you'd like to see in future videos? Your feedback really helps us get better. Thanks for being with us. 2 years ago, I was standing in the walk-in freezer of a restaurant I didn't own, staring at boxes of frozen chicken and wondering how the hell I'd gotten there. I was 29, broke, and technically homeless. Not sleeping on a park bench homeless, but living out of a Toyota Corolla with an air mattress and a gym membership for showers. The thing was, I had done everything right, or so I thought. I had a college degree, a decent job in digital marketing, and a decent life in a medium-sized city. But I had one bad quarter, got laid off, and then spent the next 6 months burning through savings trying to freelance while lying to everyone about how great remote work was going. I wasn't discovered or rescued. I got lucky in the kind of way you don't realize is luck until much later. One night I was picking up an Uber Eats delivery from this divey late-night chicken spot that ran out of a ghost kitchen. I'd been doing deliveries all night, and this was my last one. I walked in, and the manager was freaking out. Their usual delivery guy had quit mid-shift, and they were slammed. He looked at me and said, "You want to make $100 right now?" and pointed to a stack of orders. I delivered those and came back. He gave me another stack. By midnight, I'd made more money than I usually did in 2 days of Uber. I asked him if he needed a delivery guy regularly, and he said, "We need everything." Over the next month, I became their unofficial logistics guy. I coordinated their deliveries, helped streamline their online orders, and ended up fixing their clunky Google Ads campaigns during downtime. They were owned by this chill Korean-American guy in his 40s named Jay, who also had a couple of food trucks and knew how to hustle. He was skeptical of me at first, but warmed up fast when I showed him how much money he was losing on mispriced delivery menus. Eventually, I pitched him something half-formed in my brain. What if we built a delivery-only food brand that runs out of underused kitchens and is optimized for social media buzz? He squinted at me and said, "That's not new." And I said, "I know. But what if we do it better?" He told me to come back with a plan. So I stayed up for 3 days straight in my car, parked behind a 24-hour Planet Fitness, drafting out a business proposal for what I called a social food lab. The idea was to create small, branded food concepts that could go viral on TikTok or Instagram and live entirely on delivery apps, hot wings with insane spice challenges, desserts that ooze, rainbow-colored stuff, whatever the algorithm wanted. Think fast food made for clout. Jay liked the idea, enough to give me a $10,000 test budget and access to one of his smaller kitchens during off hours. We launched our first brand 2 weeks later, Fire Trap Wings. We had 5 sauce levels with wild names like Satan's Elbow and Crying in the Club. We made fake customer reaction videos, boosted them on TikTok, and got a few local micro-influencers to review the wings. It took off in the most chaotic way. We had 3-hour delivery wait times by the second weekend. People were ordering just to say they survived level 5. I slept in the supply closet and spent my days fulfilling orders and emailing TikTok pages. By month 3, we were netting $25,000 per month just from Fire Trap. We took that money and launched 2 more concepts. One was a Japanese-style cheesecake brand, and the other was a breakfast burrito spot that only operated from 6 to 11 a.m. called Brutal Mornings. Each one followed the same formula: funny/edgy branding, high-contrast food that looked wild on camera, and ridiculous names. We didn't try to make the best food. We made food that looked the best on social. By month 6, we had 8 different brands running out of 3 ghost kitchens across the city. I got an apartment, then a real office, then a team. Here's where it got wild. A VC guy who saw one of our viral clips emailed us about food brand scalability and invited us to pitch. We didn't even have an LLC at the time. Jay and I got suits from a thrift store, pitched our social culinary lab concept, now rebranded as BuzzBite Brands, and somehow raised $600,000 in pre-seed funding. We used it to build a centralized production kitchen, automate the backend with some custom software, shout out to a freelancer I found on Discord who is now our CTO, and expand to 2 more cities using license deals with other ghost kitchens. Now it's 2 years later. We've got 20-plus micro-food brands in 6 cities, over 250K combined monthly orders, and a few menu items that have become semi-famous on TikTok. I've spoken at 2 food tech conferences. We just signed a deal with a chain of gas stations to pilot a vending machine concept for our cheesecake line. I still don't fully understand how any of this worked. Here's what I've learned. Being broke doesn't kill your ambition, it just makes it heavier to carry. Virality is not luck, it's engineered. Most people trying to do cool stuff are too worried about being original. Being optimized is better than being original. Your first customers are not random people, they're you. Make something you'd find funny, exciting, crave-worthy. Don't let perfection stall you. Fire Trap Wings launched with a Canva logo and sauce names I wrote while half asleep. People loved it. I'm not a genius. I'm a guy who got trapped in a freezer and decided to try something weird instead of quitting. I'm still figuring out what I'm doing, but I'm no longer pretending I have it all together. Now I just solve one problem at a time. Next up, we're working on AI-generated food ideas and pairing them with real-time trend monitoring. Because honestly, the algorithm eats first. A little over 5 years ago, I was in a job that paid decently, had good benefits, and was only a 25-minute commute from my apartment. It was, by most accounts, the kind of job you're supposed to want. Steady, respectable. One of those corporate positions where your life gets partitioned neatly into performance reviews, Q3 goals, and Thursday donut days. But I hated it. Every bit of it. The meetings that could have been emails. The emails that should have been silence. The gray, soul-sucking carpeted floors. The 10 layers of middle management I had to get approval from to change the font on a report. I felt like I was living someone else's life. Someone who didn't mind the predictability. I minded it deeply. So I started tinkering on the side. My escape plan wasn't glamorous or even well-formed. It was just an idea. I was obsessed with coffee, not just drinking it, but understanding the entire process from bean to brew. I started roasting beans in a tiny popcorn machine I rigged with a thermometer and a metal colander in my kitchen. Every spare minute I had, I was reading forums, watching YouTube videos, ordering green beans from obscure farms around the world. My kitchen constantly smelled like a coffee lab, and I had burns on my hands from misjudging hot batches more times than I'd like to admit. The idea wasn't even to start a business at first. I just wanted to roast coffee that tasted better than the stuff I could buy locally. But as I improved, I started giving away small batches to friends, coworkers, even my building's doorman. People started asking to buy it. Not a lot, but enough that it planted a seed. I called the company Ember and Oak. No deep meaning, just two words that felt earthy and grounded and vaguely coffee adjacent. I built a super janky website using a Squarespace template and started offering one roast, a medium Ethiopian yirgacheffe, for $14 a bag. I didn't even have proper packaging. I was hand-stamping brown craft paper bags at my kitchen table and sealing them with an iron. Orders trickled in. I remember the thrill of my first non-friend order. It came from a woman in Kansas I'd never met. I called my girlfriend and screamed into the phone like I'd won the lottery. For the next 3 months, I worked full-time and then spent my evenings roasting, packaging, printing shipping labels, and sprinting to the post office before they closed. Eventually, I had to choose. Ember and Oak was growing, slowly but steadily. I wasn't making enough to replace my salary, not even close, but I knew I couldn't keep up the double life. After one particularly long night where I spilled half a batch and then burnt the other half, I realized I was going to have to leap or quit. I chose to leap. I gave my notice, drained most of my savings, and moved into a smaller apartment. My girlfriend, now wife, backed me, though I could see in her eyes she wasn't totally sure I wasn't making a huge mistake. To be fair, I wasn't sure either. For the first year, I made less than I had since college. I missed bills. I ate a lot of rice and eggs. But Ember and Oak kept growing. I got better at marketing. I learned how to target coffee enthusiasts through social media, built a small but passionate newsletter list, and started offering subscriptions. I added more roasts, more origins, and finally bought a real roaster that cost more than my car. My break came in year 2. A local barista championship featured one of my roasts, and a popular coffee blog wrote a glowing review. Overnight, I got 600 orders. It was chaos. I didn't sleep for 3 days. I had to hire 2 friends to help me roast, pack, and ship everything. That was the moment I realized this could be something real, not just a side hustle, a company. I leased a tiny warehouse space, really just a glorified garage, and moved operations out of my apartment. I finally stopped sealing bags with an iron and bought actual packaging machines. I brought on a designer to help with branding. The bags got prettier. The website got better. Sales continued to climb. Then came wholesale. A friend of a friend introduced me to a cafe owner looking for a new supplier. That turned into 3 cafes. Then 7. Now we supply over 100 cafes and restaurants across the country. I hired staff. Real employees, not just my buddies on payroll. We now have a team of 7. It hasn't been easy. I've had batches go bad and had to refund hundreds of orders. I once lost a pallet of beans in shipping and had to track it down myself by calling random truck depots. There have been sleepless nights where I stared at bank balances wondering if I'd make payroll. And plenty of times I wondered if it would all come crashing down. But last year, Ember and Oak crossed $2.4 million in revenue. We're profitable. We're growing. And I still roast beans every week, not because I have to, but because I want to. The weirdest part is how normal it all feels now. I wake up, walk into our roasting facility, talk with my team, cup new beans, check inventory, chat with cafe owners. This thing that once existed only in my kitchen and in my head is now a company that supports people, pays taxes, and has customers all over the country. Looking back, quitting my job was equal parts terrifying and necessary. If I hadn't done it, I'd still be sitting in that fluorescent-lit office, slowly shrinking into myself. I'm not rich. I don't have a yacht. But I have freedom. I have something I built from literal scratch. And every time I see someone post a photo of their morning cup tagged with our label, I get this overwhelming sense that somehow, all the stress and doubt and caffeine-fueled nights were worth it. If you're thinking about starting something, anything, just start. It'll be messy. It'll probably suck at first. But if you keep going, if you let yourself learn and fail and get better, You just might wake up one day and realize you're living a life you built with your own hands. That's worth a hell of a lot more than Donut Day. I never set out to become an entrepreneur. I didn't dream of running a business as a kid, didn't sell lemonade on the corner, and I never idolized the usual startup guru types. I just wanted to get out of debt and stop working under a boss who asked me to pick up his dry cleaning like it was part of my marketing job. It all started 2 years ago. I was 29, working at a mid-sized digital marketing agency in Atlanta. The pay was okay, but between student loans, rent, and the occasional emergency dental bill, screw you, molar number 14, I was always on the edge. One Thursday afternoon, I got called into my boss's office. I thought it was a routine check-in. Instead, he gave me a smug little speech about restructuring and handed me a severance envelope that wouldn't even cover 1 month's expenses. I remember walking out, sitting in my car, and just staring at the steering wheel for 15 minutes. I wasn't even mad, just hollow. Then I started thinking. I had no job, no real savings, but a decent portfolio and a few clients I had freelance for on the side. Maybe I could string that together into something. So I emailed everyone I'd ever worked with, old colleagues, past clients, friends, family friends. I let them know I was freelancing full-time now, doing branding, copywriting, social, the whole marketing package. Within a week, I had 2 gigs. Small ones, sure, but they paid my rent. For the first time in months, I felt a spark of control. Fast forward 3 months. I was barely sleeping, working out of a corner of my apartment, living on coffee and frozen burritos. But I had 10 clients. Nothing fancy, real estate agents, a landscaping company, a local gym. I was running their Instagram pages, writing blog posts, redesigning some ugly logos. I made just over $5,000 that month, and I thought I was crushing it. But then, one of my bigger clients ghosted me without paying a $2,200 invoice. Another paused their contract for now. I realized how fragile the whole setup was. If 2 or 3 clients bailed, I was toast. I needed to think bigger. So I started subcontracting. I reached out to a few old classmates, other freelancers, and asked if they wanted some work. I took on bigger projects and split the load. I handled the clients, the contracts, the sales calls. They handled the execution. I took a 20 to 30% cut and kept things moving. It felt weird at first, like I was pretending to be an agency, but the clients didn't care. They just wanted the work done. Around month 8, I decided to legitimize things. I filed for an LLC. I called it Cinder Creative, mostly because it sounded cool and the domain was available. I built a basic site, set up proper contracts, and hired a virtual assistant part-time. I even rented a tiny co-working office. It was the size of a large closet, but it wasn't my couch. And then, out of nowhere, something wild happened. A founder I met at a networking event referred me to his friend who had just landed seed funding for a mental health startup. They needed full-service marketing. I pitched hard, lowballed a bit, and got the contract for $18,000 a month. That was the moment. That one client changed everything. I hired 2 full-time employees, a content strategist and a designer. We started to look less like a scrappy freelance collective and more like a real agency. I invested in project management tools, bought proper accounting software, and even hired a lawyer to redo my contracts after a close call with a scope-creeping client. The next year was a blur. We went from that one big client to 5, then 10. We leaned into serving startups. They loved that we were lean, fast, and not overpriced like the big firms. We spoke their language. I kept our team small and used contractors to stay flexible. But don't get me wrong, it wasn't all hockey stick growth and motivational quotes. We made a ton of mistakes. I hired someone way too fast based on a gut feeling, and she tanked a client relationship in 3 weeks. We had a quarter where we almost couldn't make payroll because 2 clients delayed payments. I had panic attacks about taxes. I skipped vacations, lost touch with friends, and had to relearn what work-life balance meant after burning out and ending up in urgent care with a stress-induced migraine. Still, I kept showing up. So did my team. We figured out systems. We started specializing in branding and go-to-market strategy for early-stage tech companies. That became our niche. We raised our rates. Clients respected us more when we charged more, which still messes with my head a little. As of this month, Cinder Creative is 22 months old. We're a team of 7, plus a bench of 15 regular contractors. We've done $980,000 in revenue over the last 12 months, and we're on track to hit $1.5 million this year if we don't screw it up. I still remember that feeling in the car after I got laid off. That pit in my stomach. The panic. I never want to feel that helpless again. And now, I know I don't have to. I'm not some visionary founder. I didn't build an app or disrupt an industry. I just got fired, got desperate, and started building something that people needed. Then I kept going, even when I didn't know what I was doing. Especially then. If you're reading this and you're where I was, broke, stressed, trying to scrape together a life, you don't need to have it all figured out. You just need one thing people will pay you for, and the guts to keep saying yes before you feel ready. I promise, you'll figure the rest out on the way down. 2 years ago, I was sitting in the back office of a struggling furniture store my uncle left me when he passed. I was 28, broke, and I had no clue how to run a business. My degree was in marketing, but I'd never really applied it. I'd spent most of my 20s hopping jobs, freelancing a little, and basically trying not to drown. My uncle wasn't a rich man, but he had a loyal customer base and a huge warehouse of old-school furniture, big, solid with stuff your grandma would cry over. The kind of pieces that didn't sell anymore because people wanted IKEA and minimalist vibes. The place had no website, no online presence, and hadn't changed its window display since 2009. The business was bleeding money when I inherited it. I spent the first few months thinking I'd just liquidate it, sell off the inventory, and maybe get a fresh start. But something about the old place felt like home. I remembered helping him during the summers as a kid, sanding wood and wrapping deliveries. The idea of letting it die felt wrong. So I decided to go all in. The first thing I did was spend every last dollar I had on building a website. Not a fancy one, just a clean Shopify store with product photos I took myself using my phone, some old white sheets for backgrounds, and a couple of daylight lamps I found on Craigslist. I watched every free YouTube tutorial I could find on e-commerce, SEO, and digital marketing. I'd stay up until 3 a.m. writing product descriptions and figuring out Facebook ad targeting. But the real breakthrough came by accident. One afternoon, I was helping an older couple load a mahogany armoire into their truck when the wife asked, "Do you sell on Instagram?" I said no, but I went home and made an account that night. I started posting every day close-ups of the wood grain, time-lapse of furniture being restored, before and afters, delivery photos, and short videos of me talking about each piece. I had no budget for ads, so I followed people who were into vintage decor and DM'd a few interior designers offering to let them borrow furniture for shoots in exchange for a tag. One of them, a micro-influencer with maybe 9,000 followers, posted a photo of one of our mid-century dressers and tagged us. Overnight, the post got shared like crazy and the site had 17 orders by morning. 17. That was more than we'd done in the past 3 months combined. And one of those orders came from a guy in New York asking if I could recreate the piece in a darker wood. That gave me another idea. I hired a local carpenter part-time and started offering custom finishes on select pieces. It was risky. I had to pay him before I got paid, but it created a buzz. People liked the idea of semi-custom furniture without designer price tags. I even let customers name the finishes themselves. We had colors like Stormy Sunday, Whiskey Ember, and Fern Fog. That personalization made people feel involved. By the end of that year, we'd done $180,000 in revenue. Not insane money, but for a business that was making less than $30,000 the year before, it felt like winning the lottery. The second year was chaos. I had to hire help. My cousin started handling logistics and deliveries, and I brought in 2 more part-time workers for refinishing. I turned the storage room into a small photo studio and bought a real camera. I reinvested nearly every dollar we made into inventory, tools, and better packaging materials. I started shipping nationally and got listed on a few design blogs. A small interiors magazine even ran a piece about us called The Revival of Realwood. That article brought in more attention than I could handle. I had to pause the store for a week just to catch up on orders. It was stressful as hell. There were days I wanted to curl up under one of those damn end tables and cry. But it was also the most alive I'd felt in years. People started asking if I could do full rooms. That's when I launched the Room Revamp package, a bundled deal for a bedroom or living room set, personalized with a short video call consultation. That one move nearly doubled our average order value. Now we're in year 3. The business just crossed $600,000 in revenue. I've got a team of 8, including 2 full-time carpenters, a customer service rep, and my old college roommate who quit his marketing job to handle ours. We still operate out of the same warehouse, but we're looking for a second space to use solely for shipping and photography. Here's the crazy part. I still don't know if I'm doing everything right. I've made so many dumb mistakes. I once spent $4,000 on walnut wood that warped within a week. I forgot to charge shipping on 5 large orders and ate the cost myself. I've had angry customers, lost packages, and one time a delivery guy reversed into a customer's gate. But I've learned more in 2 years running this business than I did in my entire education and work history combined. I've learned how to write persuasive copy, negotiate bulk prices, edit video, run Facebook and Google ads, manage a team, file taxes, and still find time to sand down a nightstand now and then. I'm not a millionaire. I don't drive a Tesla. I still eat cereal for dinner more often than I'd like to admit. But I built something. From nothing. And people love it. If you're reading this thinking about whether you should start something, do it. Don't wait until you're ready. You'll never be ready. Just start small. Post something. Ask for feedback. Sell one thing. Then 2. And keep going. The internet changed everything. You can build a whole business from your phone while sitting in your pajamas eating reheated pizza. And if you fail, you'll still know more than when you started. My uncle's name was Henry. The business is now called Henry & Company. And every time I lock up the warehouse, I look at the old brass sign he made, still hanging by the door, and I think, we're just getting started. I started my first real business because my car broke down. At the time, I was 28, working at a mid-sized marketing firm in Tampa. Nothing glamorous. I was the guy who made sure your Facebook ads didn't suck and that your dental clinic had an Instagram page. I wasn't bad at it, but I wasn't exactly climbing the ladder either. I made enough to pay rent, have beers on weekends, and take the occasional depressing trip home to Ohio where my dad would inevitably ask me, "So when are you going to do something real?" I didn't have a good answer. Then my car, a beat-up 2006 Civic I lovingly referred to as the Roach, finally gave up on life. I was stuck with $1,400 in repair costs and maybe $300 to my name. Ubering to work wasn't sustainable, and the bus in Tampa is more a philosophical concept than a real form of transportation. So I did something dumb. Or smart. It depends on your angle. I sold the car for $600 to a junkyard, scrounged up another $400 from stuff I pawned, and used that $1,000 to start a side hustle. Not a side hustle like dropshipping or selling inspirational mugs on Etsy. I started a mobile screen repair service. Why screen repair? Well, I broke my own phone screen about a year before this and paid $170 to get it fixed at some place that reeked of vape juice and regret. I watched the guy do it in 20 minutes. I figured, if he could do it high off his mind with Cheeto dust on his fingers, maybe I could too. So I bought a kit off Amazon, some screens off eBay, and watched every YouTube tutorial I could find. I practiced on a few busted phones I bought on Craigslist. Cracked a few, swore a lot, finally got the hang of it. Then I made a simple ad on Facebook Marketplace. I'll fix your cracked iPhone screen at your house, fast and affordable. $60 for an iPhone 6, $80 for an iPhone 8, and so on. Within 24 hours, I had 4 people message me. 2 flaked, but 2 actually let me fix their screens. I made $140 that weekend. I was hooked. The next few months were pure hustle. I worked 9 to 5 at the agency, then did repairs every evening and all weekend. I kept everything mobile. No rent, no overhead, just me, a backpack, and a bunch of screens. People love the convenience. I'd show up to their office or home, sit at their kitchen table, fix the phone in 30 minutes, and get paid. Soon I was clearing $1,200 a week on repairs alone. More than my day job. I kept it quiet for a while. I didn't want my boss to know I was moonlighting. But I started thinking, could I quit? Could this actually be a thing? Then a regular client, some accountant I'd helped 3 times, asked if I could fix all the phones at his firm. Apparently, 15 salespeople with slippery hands. I said yes, did them over 3 days, and walked away with $1,400. That was the push. I quit the agency. Gave 2 weeks, left on decent terms, and jumped into the business full-time. I named it Crackfix Cringe. I know, made a simple website, got a logo from Fiverr, and started running cheap ads targeting Tampa locals. I offered $10 off for referrals, next-day service, and 0 travel fees. Growth was slow but steady. I hired my cousin to help with admin. Then my buddy Drew, who'd just been laid off from a construction gig, to help with repairs. Taught him everything I knew. By month 8, we were doing around $9,000 per month in revenue. But the real game changer came from a dentist. He needed his phone fixed, and we got talking. I told him I was looking to expand, but didn't want to rent a shop. He told me I should talk to this guy named Ray, who owned a strip mall and was offering short-term leases on kiosks. Turns out Ray was exactly the kind of guy who liked taking chances on small businesses. I pitched him my idea, a while you wait, repair kiosk outside a busy grocery store in his plaza. He gave me a 3-month trial for cheap. That kiosk made $6,000 in its first month. We opened a second one in a different plaza, then a third. I kept everything lean, no full stores, just high-traffic kiosks with trained techs and fast repairs. It wasn't glamorous, but people loved the speed and convenience. By year 2, we had 5 kiosks across Tampa, 6 techs, and a part-time marketing assistant. We rebranded to Snap Repair, made the logo look less like it belonged on a skate shoe, and launched a scheduling app. And then COVID hit. Everything died for about 3 months. Malls closed, grocery stores limited foot traffic, and no one cared about cracked phones when they were worried about breathing. I almost shut the whole thing down. But then, a pivot. People still needed repairs, they just didn't want to go out. So we relaunched as a fully mobile service again. I rented 2 vans, wrapped them in our branding, and equipped them as mobile repair units. Our techs went to people's driveways, fixed their phones, and left. Contactless. It blew up. We offered same-day repairs, bundled battery replacements, and even added iPad and laptop screens. Sales doubled. Fast forward to now, 3.5 years after I fixed that first iPhone 6. We have 12 mobile repair vans, 2 support staff, and we're doing around $60,000 per month. We're still in Tampa, but eyeing expansion into Orlando and Miami. I still don't have a new car. I ride in the back of a branded van like a weirdo CEO Ubering to meetings. My dad finally stopped asking when I get a real job. He even asked me to fix his phone last Christmas. I told him to use the app and book an appointment like everyone else. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. That might sound weird coming from someone who built a multi-million-dollar business from a dingy basement, but it's the truth. I wasn't the kid selling lemonade on the sidewalk or flipping sneakers in high school. I was just trying to survive emotionally, financially, mentally. This whole thing started after I got laid off from a job I hated anyway. It was a mid-tier marketing firm. I was 29, already feeling like I was years behind everyone else, sitting in meetings where nobody listened and writing reports that nobody read. When I got the email from HR, subject line, regarding your employment, I actually laughed. Then I panicked. I had $14,200 in savings, $9,600 in credit card debt, and no real direction. I spent the first 2 weeks binge-watching documentaries, stress-eating frozen pizza, and Googling how to pivot your life at 3 a.m. Then one random Tuesday, I had a weird moment of clarity. I remembered this custom mug I made for my dad years ago. It had this inside joke printed on it that made him laugh every time. Dumb joke, simple design, but it made him smile every morning. That moment stuck with me. I started thinking, what if I could build a little shop around funny, personal gifts like that? Not the generic, best dad ever stuff you see on Amazon, but actual jokes, niche references, weirdly specific designs that only certain people would get. I didn't know the term for it at the time, but I was aiming for what they now call micro-niche personalization. So I dug into what I had, a laptop, Adobe Illustrator, on a cracked version I'll admit, and some free time. I called it Inside Joke Company and started designing mugs, t-shirts, stickers, anything I could fulfill via print on demand. I listed 10 products on Etsy. I got 0 sales for 5 days straight. Then someone from Kentucky bought a mug with a dumb quote from an old cartoon, one I thought only 2 people in the world would remember. That $13 sale hit like a drug. It validated everything. I danced alone in my underwear at 2 a.m. I still have the email notification saved. Sales were slow at first. I was doing everything myself: customer service, design, mock-ups, marketing, shipping coordination, even pretending to be multiple people when customers got upset. But I started reinvesting every penny. I got a real copy of Illustrator. I paid for some Etsy ads. I upgraded to better mock-up software. Slowly, I hit $500 in profit per month. Then $1,000. Then $2,000. A year in, I was making more than I ever had at my 9 to 5. But it came with a price. I had no social life, and my mental health was hanging on by a thread. One December, after handling 300 holiday orders by myself, I had a minor breakdown. I was standing in line at the post office, holding 6 overflowing bags of packages, when I dropped one and all the labels scattered. I started crying. Not just tearing up, full-on sobbing in public. A woman behind me helped pick them up. She didn't say anything, just smiled gently like she understood. I still think about her. That night, I realized I couldn't keep going solo. I hired my first freelancer, just a virtual assistant to handle emails. Then a designer. Then another. Eventually, I had a small team across 3 time zones. That's when things really started to click. I could focus on strategy, audience growth, and developing the weird little subcultures our brand attracted. TikTok helped. One of our customers made a video of her dad opening one of our mugs and laughing so hard he nearly dropped it. It got 600K views. Our orders spiked by 300% in a week. That virality gave us the capital we needed to build our own fulfillment pipeline, no longer relying on generic print-on-demand services. We set up a small warehouse and bought industrial printers. I trained 2 employees to handle quality control and shipping. We started getting custom requests from influencers and YouTubers for their own niche joke merch. We leaned into it. We even made a secret VIP program for customers who placed over 10 orders, giving them access to inside jokes based on inside jokes. By year 3, we had crossed $1.5 million in annual revenue. We never ran a traditional ad campaign. It was all word of mouth, social sharing, and raw personality. We had no formal office, just a tight-knit team of remote creatives who loved making weird stuff for weird people. The most surreal moment? Seeing someone on a train with one of our shirts, a deep-cut reference to a 2002 Flash animation. I didn't say anything, just sat there quietly smiling like a proud parent. Not everything was smooth, of course. A major supplier once ghosted us 2 weeks before Black Friday. One of our designs was accidentally flagged as copyright infringement, even though it was totally original. I spent hours on the phone with Etsy and lawyers trying to fix it. Our site crashed during a holiday launch. A disgruntled customer posted a video claiming we were a scam. She later apologized and deleted it. Each time felt like the end of the world. But we survived. Now, 5 years later, I look back and laugh at how I stumbled into all this. I never wrote a business plan. I never pitched investors. I still don't fully understand SEO, but I understand people. I understand that laughter and recognition, feeling like someone gets your obscure humor, is priceless. We're still small compared to big merch companies, but we're cult-level beloved in our circles. And honestly, that feels better than any Fortune 500 dream ever did. I still design sometimes. Still answer the occasional customer email when I need a serotonin boost. And every now and then, I get a message that says something like, "I gave this to my brother, and he laughed for 10 minutes straight. Thank you." That's why I do it. Because sometimes, a mug is more than a mug. I never wanted to be an entrepreneur. I was the kind of person who read productivity blogs but couldn't make it through a full to-do list. I always imagined I'd climb the corporate ladder, get some awards, take 2-week vacations to Spain, and retire with a solid 401k. Entrepreneurship seemed like a personality trait I just didn't have. That was, until I got laid off 2 months before my wedding. At the time, I was working as a mid-level marketing manager for a consumer tech company that sold high-end smart kitchen gadgets. I wasn't passionate about sous vide cookers, but I was good at content strategy. I helped grow our YouTube channel from 10K to 200K subscribers in a year, and I thought my job was pretty safe. It wasn't. They cut 15% of the workforce to refocus on core offerings, and I was out with a month's severance and a pink slip. I didn't tell my fiancée for 2 days. I'd go to a Starbucks every morning, pretend to log into meetings, and sit there wondering how the hell I was going to find another job fast enough to keep our wedding plans on track. When I finally told her, she was way calmer than I expected. She just said, "What if this is your sign to do your own thing?" I laughed. I said, "What thing?" She said, "Didn't you always say you wanted to build something that didn't just sell expensive junk to rich people?" That's when it hit me. I had an idea. Not a startup idea. Not something I could pitch to VCs or turn into a unicorn. Just something small that I thought people might actually want. For 2 years, I've been obsessed with digital minimalism and productivity. I built this Frankenstein of a daily planner and Google Sheets that I'd used every day. It tracked tasks, reflected on daily habits, and even had this little energy meter I used to figure out what time of day I worked best. Friends who saw it always asked me to send them a copy. I thought maybe I could clean it up, turn it into a Notion template, and see if anyone would actually buy it. So I built a basic landing page using Card, wrote some copy like a digital system to organize your life without organizing your life away, and posted it on Twitter and Product Hunt. I priced it at $14. I made 3 sales in the first week, One was my cousin. The other two were complete strangers. That tiny one lit something up in me. I spent the next month learning everything I could about digital products. I started writing a newsletter about productivity and solopreneurship. I recorded Loom videos showing how I used the template. I added testimonials. I included bonus mini templates. Within 3 months, I had made $3,500 in sales. Not a ton, but it felt real. I used that momentum to launch a second product, a course on no BS productivity for creators, priced at $49. That one made $8,000 in its first 2 months. I postponed my job search. My fiancé picked up extra shifts. We cut back on wedding costs. We got married in a small backyard ceremony with 22 people, and it was perfect. After the wedding, I went all in. I started hosting weekly office hours over Zoom, where people who had bought my templates or courses could ask me questions. I had maybe 10 people show up each week, but I treated them like VIP clients. I started to notice a pattern. A lot of them weren't just looking for productivity hacks. They were stuck in decision loops, trying to go from idea to execution. So I pivoted again and launched a cohort-based course called Zero to Done. It focused on helping creators actually launch their first product. We capped the first cohort at 20 people, charged $199, and sold out in 6 days. That's when I stopped thinking of myself as someone trying to replace their job and started thinking of myself as a business owner. I hired a freelance designer to clean up my branding. I switched from MailChimp to ConvertKit and started segmenting my list. I made $42,000 that year, not enough to call myself rich, but enough to prove the model worked. The next year, I made $113,000. I remember hitting 6 figures and sitting in my living room with a beer, thinking, holy shit, I built this from a Google sheet. It hasn't all been clean growth. I launched a podcast that completely flopped. I tried a paid community, and it quickly turned into a ghost town. I messed up my taxes and had to pay a painful fee. But every time something failed, I learned more about who my audience really was, overwhelmed creators who wanted structure, not noise. This year, I launched a membership called Creators Compass. For $12 per month, members get monthly planning templates, live strategy sessions, and guest workshops. It's grown to 1,200 members in 4 months, and it's my most stable revenue stream yet. I also do some one-on-one consulting for creators launching their first product. That's what pays the mortgage now. I'm still not running a startup. I still don't have a logo you'd recognize. But I wake up every morning and get to work on things I care about, for people I care about, on my own terms. The weirdest part? I don't even use a to-do list anymore. I know what I'm building. I know why I'm building it. That's enough. If you're sitting there with a weird Google sheet, or a folder of half-written guides, or a workflow you've refined over years, maybe you're closer than you think. Not every business has to start with a pitch deck. Sometimes it starts with something you made for yourself, because nothing else worked quite right. Sometimes that's enough to build a life on. I started my first real business because I couldn't stand my job anymore. I was 29, burnt out, and tired of feeling like I was drowning in someone else's dream. I worked for a mid-sized digital marketing agency in Austin, and while I was good at what I did, the soul-sucking meetings, the performative Slack culture, and the constant drive to impress clients left me feeling numb. Every Sunday, the dread started around noon. You know the kind. It's like your whole chest is being slowly compressed by a concrete block of emails you haven't read yet. The thing that finally pushed me over the edge was a quarterly review where my manager told me I needed to smile more on Zoom calls. That was it. I wasn't even mad. I just had this quiet moment where I realized I couldn't do this forever. So, I started something on the side. It wasn't some genius SaaS idea or a sleek consumer app. It was window cleaning. Seriously. High-end residential window cleaning, to be exact. I had done it in college for a summer job and remembered 2 things. It paid surprisingly well, and most people hated doing it themselves. I called the new venture Clearview and slapped together a basic Squarespace site. Bought some Google ads, printed out some door hangers, and started knocking on doors in the nicer neighborhoods on weekends. My girlfriend at the time thought I was losing it. "You have a 6-figure job, and you're going to start washing windows?" she asked one night. I told her I wasn't washing windows. I was building a brand. She didn't get it. The first 2 months were brutal. I made maybe $1,500 total. I'd come home sweaty, bruised, and dead tired from clambering up ladders and scrubbing away grime. But there was something addictive about it too. Every customer I booked was mine. Every dollar felt earned in a way that my agency paycheck never did. By month 4, things started picking up. Word of mouth started kicking in. I posted before and after photos on Nextdoor and Facebook groups. I gave discounts for referrals. I hired my first part-time helper, a kid named Marco who just graduated high school. By the end of that summer, I was making about $6,000 a month on the side, and my boss was still telling me I needed to be more client-facing. So I quit. That was both the scariest and most liberating decision I've ever made. I took the plunge and went full-time. I knew I had maybe 6 months of savings if it all went sideways. But I believed in it. I really did. Not just in the business, but in my own ability to make it work. Fast forward to year 2. Clearview was grossing just over $200,000 annually, with decent profit margins. I had 4 full-time guys working for me and a few part-timers I'd call in for big jobs. We expanded services, gutter cleaning, pressure washing, solar panel cleaning. I branded the trucks, hired a local agency to shoot a promo video, and even started wearing uniforms. It looked like a real business. And it was. But here's the part no one tells you. Scaling a blue-collar business is hard. Every week, something was breaking. Equipment, trucks, communication lines. I had to deal with a guy who ghosted mid-job and left a client furious. Another time, a customer tried to stiff me because the windows didn't feel clean, whatever that meant. There were sleepless nights where I stared at spreadsheets wondering if I could make payroll. The hardest stretch came in year 3, right after we signed a commercial contract with a set of office parks. It was our biggest deal yet, 6 figures, multi-location, recurring revenue. I thought we'd finally made it. But managing it was a nightmare. We weren't ready. My team wasn't trained for commercial standards. I underestimated the logistics. We missed deadlines, got dinged with penalties, and nearly lost the contract. I had to hire a consultant just to untangle the mess. There were moments I seriously considered selling. I had 2 offers from larger home services companies, both pretty decent. One would have given me a clean exit at just under $1 million. But I couldn't pull the trigger. Not yet. Not after everything. It still felt like I was just getting started. Instead, I doubled down on systems. I stopped trying to do everything myself. I hired an operations manager who used to work at a landscaping firm, and she changed everything. We implemented better CRM tools, standardized the training program, and even offered benefits to our full-timers. That last one was a game changer. Retention went up. Customer complaints dropped. We weren't just hustling anymore. We were operating. By year 5, we were servicing 3 cities in Texas. I had 2 managers running the day-to-day, and I only stepped in for strategy or major client meetings. For the first time in my life, I took a real vacation. No laptop, no guilt. Just me, a hammock, and the sound of not checking email. It's now year 6. Clearview crossed $1.2 million in annual revenue last quarter. We've got a fleet of 7 trucks, 18 employees, and a legit training academy for new hires. We get messages from people across the country asking if we're franchising. We're not. Yet. But what matters more to me than all that is what I've learned. Entrepreneurship isn't glamorous. Most of it is grunt work. It's waking up early, fixing what's broken, and doing the stuff no one else wants to do. It's failing in quiet, unsexy ways and getting back up anyway. It's realizing that control is more valuable than comfort, and owning your time is the real flex. People ask me now if I regret leaving my agency job. I don't. Not for a second. I built something from nothing. I turned a squeegee and a ladder into a business that feeds families. That's worth more to me than any corner office. And yeah, I still clean windows sometimes. Not because I have to, but because I want to. There's something weirdly therapeutic about it. It reminds me where I started. Keeps me grounded. And if you're reading this and thinking about starting your own thing, my advice is simple. Start small. Start now. And be ready to eat dirt for a while. It's worth it. Thank you for watching until the end. If you enjoyed this video, don't forget to like and subscribe to the channel so you won't miss new videos. Also, leave a comment. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Your support and engagement mean a lot to me. See you in the next video.